Okay, looks like we are live now on YouTube. We've got people joining already. We'll give people just a minute to join because it's exactly 1 o'clock Eastern. One tiny change to our panel is that Luke Lynn is now going to be joining instead of Joe. He's an alum from NYC Data Science Academy and also worked there and now works in machine learning and AI at JP Morgan Chase. So very excited that he could join. Give people just a second to roll in. All right, fantastic. Well, let's get started. I'm Liz, and I run Course Report, which is a resource for students who are choosing a coding bootcamp. I've been working on Course Report for about 10 years, and so much has changed in the bootcamp world over those last 10 years, the surge of AI and machine learning being one of them, a huge one this year. So thanks everyone for joining today to hear these 4 bootcamp alumni share how they are working with AI now.
And I'm Jess. I'm the content manager here at Course Report. Let's jump right in and introduce everyone because we've got 4 fantastic panelists joining us today. And I love that everyone is working in different subsets of tech, anywhere from fintech to software engineering to data science to UX.
Yeah, okay. So Nate Welter went to the full stack software engineering bootcamp at Coding Temple in 2021. And before Coding Temple, Nate was working in account management, and now he's a software engineer at Notable. So thanks for being here, Nate. And then Jeff Apples started working in UX and product design in 2018 after graduating from General Assembly's UX design intensive boot camp. And before that, he was an aspiring academic. And since GA, he's worked with agencies and startups and enterprise organizations. And he's now a lead designer on a customer 360 platform team at Salesforce. So welcome, Jeff.
We have Lou Zhang, and Lou went to the data science intensive at Springboard in 2016. Before Springboard, Lou was an industry analyst at a trade association, and now he's been building his career in data from data analyst to director of data science and is building out the data science team at DataCore. So welcome, Lou. And Luke Lynn was in the second cohort at New York City Data Science Academy and then went on to teach there afterwards. He's now a machine learning AI researcher and engineer at JP Morgan Chase & Co. So we're really excited to hear from him now, or excited to hear from him on how AI is being considered in the world of fintech. Yeah.
Definitely. Welcome, Luke. So as you can see, if you're tuning in, these panelists are all career changers. They're all working in tech, but they took slightly different paths, like we all do. And they're all now working with AI in some way. And none of them did like an official AI training program. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But going into today, you know, Jess and I had a long list of our own questions, but we also have the best readers ever. And as y'all RSVP'd, you submitted some really great questions. So we want to give you, we want to really focus on your questions today. So we incorporated all of those into the questions we're going to ask today.
Yeah, so if you asked a question when you registered, we'll pass those on to our panel and we'll continue to take your questions. So be sure to use that Q&A feature on YouTube Live throughout this live panel.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to get everyone thinking, you can tell us in the chat and you can use the Q&A feature. It's on the right side of your screen in YouTube. Tell us where you are in the research process. Is there a question that you have about how to choose the right bootcamp? You can put that there.
Yeah, we'd also love to know if you've started to experiment with AI tools, and if so, which ones you've been using. You can put that in the chat.
And finally, just to get you thinking, you can get some questions to answer in the chat. You know, what kind of job would you hope to land when you actually graduate from a boot camp? Do you want to work specifically with AI or machine learning? If you look around at this panel, we've got folks working in UX design. We've got a lot of questions about UX design. So tell us your dream job.
Yeah.
And we'll answer questions in the chat. We'll also direct those to our panelists throughout. So thanks for using it.
Yeah. So I guess we'll kick off a question for everyone. Justin asked, did you have programming experience before joining your respective boot camps? So if you could just let us know. Let's start with Lou.
Yeah, sure. So I had a little bit of programming experience. I had used statistical programming applications in college because I was an economics and finance major, like Stata and a little bit of Visual Basic and Excel as well, but nothing really that heavy duty. And it was actually a really good natural transition to Python and R because it was the same style of thinking. But the actual part of my job in the past did not involve a lot of programming.
Luke, do you want to jump in next?
Sure, yeah. So before I joined NYC Data Science Academy as a student, I was a PhD student in pure math at Stony Brook University, and I didn't have any programming. So we did because it's pure math. We did everything in with pen and pencil and paper. And I recall back to the time when I'm about to graduate, there was a professor who circulated an email asking, "Hey, I need to sketch a graph for my paper I'm writing. Can somebody help me?" Nobody knew how to just do that. But later, after I joined the bootcamp, it became so much easier with that kind of task. Yeah.
And Nate, as our software engineer here, did you have any programming skills before Coding Temple?
No, I actually had almost zero technical background whatsoever. I heard Lou talk about Excel a little bit. That was about the extent of it. So I did my undergrad at Indiana University, had a major in arts management and a minor in business. So got a little bit of technical into the technical side of things with the business minor. But overall, no, I didn't. Yeah, going to the boot camp was my first time really ever seeing code. I think we started off with HTML and Python. I maybe had a month of self-taught experience before the boot camp.
Wow. What a career trajectory for you. And then Jeff, you're in UX design, but did you have any programming skills before?
Absolutely not. No, I couldn't have told you the difference between HTML, CSS, Python, like what you're supposed to do with those different languages. Just no idea.
Amazing. Okay, so it sounds like kind of spectrum from zero experience at all to some statistics, math, that type of background, maybe a little bit of Excel, but everyone went into boot camps as a programming, maybe beginner to intermediary. This is another one for everyone. Why did everyone ultimately choose the boot camp that you attended? This is a personal decision and sure a lot of research went into it, but if y'all can think back a couple of years and just think about your research process, like what stood out about the boot camp you attended? Nate, do you want to start with Coding Temple?
Yeah. Definitely, I think I used course report a fair amount when I was researching boot camps. So thank you, Liz, for that. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me with Coding Temple was just the individualized attention that they were set to offer me. So I had a relatively small cohort. I believe they're a bit bigger now, but they have more instructor support. So my cohort only had, I think, 8 to 10 students in it. So I really had a lot of chances for one-on-one time and that individualized attention as we were going through the cohort.
Okay, so individualized attention. Luke, you were in one of the first couple of cohorts at NYC Data Science Academy, and you're based in New York. Did that have anything to do with your decision there? How did you decide?
Absolutely. I did take advantage of being close to New York City, where we have a few. Back to the time I joined bootcamp was 2015, actually. So a few in-person bootcamp just aroused at that time. So I actually went to there then and talked to the people in the different school. And you probably have something you have in mind of what you want to learn. And by interacting with these people, you would know, you will actually feel whether they could provide you what you need and whether you have the connection with these people, what they talk about. I think that those help a lot.
That is a fantastic idea. I also feel like if you came from the PhD background, the kind of quant background, NYC Data Science Academy actually makes a lot of sense. Were a lot of your cohort mates also from a similar background?
Yes,
Yeah.
from STEM and advanced degree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. And Lou, why did you choose?
So honestly, it was a combination of Springboard's really good SEO. I saw an ad on Facebook for them, and that piqued my interest. And then I did a little bit more research into Springboard and a couple other programs. And I think what really drew me to Springboard was the fact that there was a individualized mentor program that was a part of it. So you get a half hour to an hour session a week with someone with industry experience, and that was huge for me because I didn't know too many people in the industry at the time, and I felt like that would also be critical to build my network in that way. And then the other thing was that Springboard seemed to have much more of a vocational job focus. So back when I did it in 2016, there wasn't a job guarantee, but everything was geared towards finding that first job in data science. So there was really a heavy emphasis on developing a portfolio, a heavy emphasis on interview skills and networking. And my goal wasn't necessarily to understand all of the nitty gritty theoretical underpinnings of data science, but it was to get a job so I could get hands on experience, get my hands dirty with the data as soon as possible. So that's what drew me to Springboard.
Smart. And Jeff, what stood out about GA as you were looking for design boot camps, or did you consider multiple different career tracks?
So mine was kind of weird in that before I went to grad school, I was working as a copywriter and a copy editor for a local design agency here in Denver. So I was doing marketing copy, but I was also working with designers on maybe like proto UX writing type stuff. It was, information architecture on a certain page, looking at micro copy. And I was also working on the side as a project manager for some of these designers for some of their side work. And the founder of this agency took me out for lunch one day with a couple of other designers and said, Jeff, you should be a designer. You'd be a great designer. And I had no filter for that. I was like, well, I didn't go to art school, so I don't know why I would be a good designer. And fast forward maybe like 3 or 4 years, I was finishing up my PhD, and had a friend who said, all the training that you need to get now that I couldn't have gotten before, because like I said, do I go to art school? Do I do another bachelor's in design? He said, all that's changed now. They have boot camps where they actually teach UX design within certain immersive courses. And so he suggested I check out General Assembly. So I did one of their free kind of like meet and greets, like let's just kind of figure out what's UX design. I went to that and I was really impressed with just their overall, the air of what they were doing. They had a good reputation. I knew some of designer friends who had recommended them. And they also had, kind of to Lou's point as well, they had a very strong emphasis in trying to help network how to kind of reformat LinkedIn resume so that you actually are making a step forward as kind of a professional in the tech industry. So it was kind of a assemblage of all those different reasons that led me to General Assembly.
Well, I know we want to talk about, what you're working on today, but I also just want to point out to anyone watching that that's super smart, going to those intro classes before. And like Luke said, talking to folks that have actually been to the school and like seeing yourself in that, in that environment is super smart, right? Like start with those free intro classes, free workshops, low cost workshops. Super smart way of seeing if the boot camp's going to be a good fit for you. So love that y'all pointed those things out.
So everyone here graduated a little bit ago, but at the time that you were choosing your boot camp, were any of you like already thinking about working in AI or machine learning? Lou and Luke, you both chose data science programs. So did you have your sights set on working in AI?
If you don't mind, I could go first.
Yeah.
So yeah, about machine learning and AI, I think one caveat is that there's a like a myth that people think if you put your data into a machine learning algorithm, you got the result. It is totally not that. And in fact, so if you're considering a career in machine learning and AI, I would say that like your understanding in data, your understanding in the business is actually the crucial point for this. So when you would like to research what kind of program you want to join, I would still suggest that going to their event, interact with these people, try to see if what they say, has any connection with what you have. Like if you have like quantitative background, you probably look for what they say about, the basic behind the algorithm, how they work, and see if you could go further in that direction. And if you have some business background, or if you're familiar with a specific business, you should probably seek if they provide you any tools or methodology that allow you to do what you have been doing good better, right? So that's the kind of, because what you could obtain from these tools is not the answer. You are the one who provide the answer. These tools will help you to achieve that faster, better, more efficiently. And you would like to see if people you like to work with or you want to learn from, they could give you an idea how that could be achieved. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I sort of had an idea of wanting to go into machine learning and AI, and I knew that it was a hot, up and rising field. Data scientist was the sexiest job of the 21st century, all of that stuff. But I didn't know what the specifics of what all of that meant and exactly what I'd be doing on a day-to-day basis. So that's where Springboard came in and helped, because they immediately set me up with a mentor. My mentor was actually the first data scientist at Instacart, so someone with a lot of industry experience, which was really incredible because I would have never been able to hook that up myself. Springboard basically was a critical part of that. So immediately, talking to him, like seeing what it was like back in 2016 to work in data science at what at the time was a fledgling startup, Instacart, and get a ground level view of what that was really like. So that was really critical. And then the coursework was also really critical in making sure that I understood the basics and the fundamentals of what it meant to be a data scientist. And then once I started my first job, I was immediately able to apply and use the skills that I was able to gain in the boot camp.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of questions these days, about whether someone should do an AI boot camp specifically. And today, all the boot camps that y'all went to actually do probably teach some type of dedicated AI machine learning course, right? General Assembly is doing these 2-day workshops. Springboard has a machine learning and AI career track. NYC Data Science Academy, now has machine learning like in the title of the boot camp. But there are so many paths, I think, into AI, and they'll really kind of represent that. And so starting with those foundational or like fundamental data skills that you would learn at a boot camp seems like the right place to begin, right? You don't want to just like jump straight into this like umbrella career of working in AI. So yeah, it's an interesting nuance. But it sounds like everybody started with those like foundational fundamental skills. Cool. Okay, so thinking back to when y'all graduated, I know maybe it's been a couple of years, so we don't have to talk about like the exact curriculum that you learned, but what had everybody actually learned in the boot camp? Like what level did you feel like you were at on graduation day? Did everyone feel like a senior AI engineer the day they graduated from a boot camp? Jeff, what did you feel?
So I always tell people that I knew just enough to be dangerous, and I knew just enough to actually kind of like be competent at the job. Um, but it's just like anything where with any sort of kind of educational endeavor, you get trained to do something and then you hop into the context and you start seeing kind of all the ambiguities and all the gray areas where you have to kind of think critically of like, okay, I have these skills, these maybe like hard skills. I also have certain soft skills and I have to negotiate certain situations, right? Um, and so I think what I learned was that I could do the job like, as is, but I also approached it as saying like, hey, I'm also I'm a junior designer, I'm a beginner, and so I was happy to find a space where it was a good team, really strong kind of like creative director manager who had had a career in design for almost 20 years at that point. As well as designers at different levels, a few seniors who could actually say like, all right, we're going to take you under our wing, let's like go through this scenario. Here's how you deal with a PM who's really mad at you. Here's how you deal with these certain situations where you can't really learn it except in the context that you have to execute it in. So definitely got everything that I needed to kind of get me into the room, but also kind of had to have that growth mindset and say like, all right, now it's time to kind of put those skills to action.
Anyone can hop in here too.
Yeah.
Nate, what were you feeling on graduation?
Yeah, I would definitely echo Jeff's response there. I feel like I did know just enough to be dangerous. I mean, typically, at least at Coding Temple in the full stack program, we had a very specific set of languages and frameworks that we learned. So I felt, relatively competent in creating a full stack application given the tech stack that I learned at Coding Temple. I do think, like aside from, those really like, hard technical skills like language specific or framework specific, or even like, career path, back end, front end, ML, AI. I think the most valuable thing I learned at Coding Temple was how to think like a developer and think like a programmer. So like Jeff mentioned, just enough maybe to get your foot in the door. But I think once you do get your foot in the door and you are seeing kind of all of the context around the role and all of the ambiguity, you kind of have developed this mindset and kind of can understand, all right, I may not understand this right now, but I have the tools in front of me to learn how to do this and be resourceful and figure this out. So it's a lot of what the job is, depending on what role you're in. You're solving very hard problems. And I think the boot camp really helps you kind of give you those tools to help find solutions on your own.
I think that's one of the, yeah, Lou, go ahead.
So my situation was a little unique because I actually found a job before I finished the boot camp, and that was because someone on the rowing team that I was on in DC had an opening. Her mentor turned out to be the hiring manager for a data analyst position. So when I first got to the job, I felt completely not equipped to do it because I had not even finished Springboard. And I was sort of learning on the job as you go. And fortunately for me, the team was kind of almost like a very experimental data science team. So we didn't really have a charter to immediately put out revenue generating products. So a lot of the stuff that we were working on was very just like experimental and, kind of like laboratory like. So that gave me a lot of opportunity to just slowly and methodically play with different methods and learn on the job. And I think that was critical towards allowing me to gain some experiential experience for data science for all my subsequent positions.
Almost sounds like your capstone project at the Springboard was actually working in a real company, like with a real data set, but maybe a little more pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
was your mentor helpful there? Oh, sorry, Luke, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. Please go ahead.
Yes, he was, because once I got to my first data analyst job, he was actually able to help with the actual work itself, which was extremely valuable. Because people were like, "Oh, how do you know this? You're just only a data analyst." I'm like, "I have a secret weapon. It's the first data scientist at Instacart helping me," and that was really valuable and really really I'm really grateful for that because not everyone gets that sort of opportunity.
It's a cool opportunity. And Luke, sorry for cutting you off earlier. How did you feel on graduation day? Did you feel like you had gone from a PhD in pure math to a data scientist?
It's a totally different mindset. But I still remember vividly that that by the time I graduated from the bootcamp, I felt like I could do anything in data science. So if someone asked me, "Hey, could you give me this summary? Could you give me this data set?" I would pretty much just say yes. And then when I actually work on that, I realized, okay, it's a lot more difficult than I thought. I'm obviously much more proficient now than I was when I graduated. But that mindset of, yeah, I can do this, no problem. That was built, at that time.
That might be a perfect description of like the difference between a junior and a senior, like director level data scientist or code or software engineer, is that you can say yes to anything, and then you find out like you figure out the best way of doing everything as you grow and learn and become more senior. Okay, fantastic. Thanks everyone for sharing those.
Yeah. Anne asked a question that we get really in all of our webinars. I think it's really interesting now that we're seeing all this new AI coming onto the scene and into tech roles. The question is, can older people take advantage of a boot camp? Nate, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think people of almost any age can take advantage of a boot camp. I mean, my boot camp was remote, so I would say I think we had a like a logical thinking entry exam, but I would say outside of that, anyone who has kind of a general understanding, knows their way around the internet and a computer could absolutely hold their own in a boot camp. I think just more general, I think there may be like a false maybe misconception that tech may just be for younger people as an industry, but that's absolutely not the case. I had people of all ages that I graduated with in my boot camp. I'm currently working with people of all ages out in the industry that have also taken advantage of a boot camp. So I would say, if you're interested in it and that's the only thing you're hung up on, absolutely take the plunge. You can definitely benefit from this just as anyone else can.
And Jeff, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I would also agree with what Nate said. You can do it at any age. If you are a little bit older, I think one of the things that I've found is that you also probably have other industry experience or other working experience or just life experience that you'll be able to bring to the table as well. And especially in something like UX design, which is I think it's just basically herding cats. And I had a manager say actually like the drawing, creating an interface is the easiest part. Most of my time personally is spent just like talking to people, trying to get everybody, drive consensus, doing presentations, working with developers and ideas. And I think that as someone I was in my mid-30s when I actually went to the boot camp. And so I was able to take some of my, just prior life experience and just bring that into the situation as a UX designer with some of these kind of like boot camp, some of the hard skills that I learned in boot camp. I do think, and I'm sure some of the panelists would agree as well, I do think that some of those prior life skills are highly valued in our industry because we're often looking for people who have had just different experiences. They've been able to grow from them, things that have changed them. So you can definitely do it even if you're a little bit older.
Yeah, I also just want to point out that we have a couple of PhDs on this panel. That takes time, right? Like the average bootcamp graduate has 5 to 7 years of work experience. And that is super valuable, as Jeff pointed out. Jeff has a PhD in philosophy, right, Jeff? So, as we think about working in AI, and we cannot ignore the conversation around, ethics around AI as well. And so, that type people that have taken that time to, invest in other industries and other skills, I think are super valuable to teams. And okay, we got this question in a few different ways. So I'll ask Kira's question, which was, what was the most useful skill that you learned at a boot camp that you've been able to apply in your current role? Can y'all think back on your time at the boot camp? Maybe it was something a soft skill. Maybe it was like a specific technology that you just use all the time now. There's one thing that stood out.
Yeah, so I can take this. For me, it was actually data storytelling. So being able to paint a picture with the analysis that you do and communicate that to not just technical, but also non-technical audiences. So putting things in very relatable terms is an extremely useful skill in any sort of technical occupation, because most of the people that you're presenting to will not be as technical or as well versed as you in that particular application. So this has come in very useful for me, especially in my last job at a VC funded startup, because whenever I needed to present to the board or give a webinar to our customers who were factory owners, they needed to really understand the work that I was doing, that my team was doing, instead of just hearing a bunch of jargon and being confused and not knowing what was going on. So that really helped us establish a lot of credibility that we would not have gotten otherwise if we didn't really know how to present our analysis in a relatable way.
If I may go next.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Luke.
On what Lou just said, right? Credibility is actually very important in any position that you work on. And the technique that I learned, most useful technique I learned from Bootcamp is actually the basic one, like group by aggregation, visualization, just to show things directly from data. I work in bank, as you know, and everything we do is heavily scrutinized. You cannot just tell the governance because ChatGPT told me so, right? So what would you do, especially when something that is counterintuitive happen? If machine learning tell you something that business people don't agree with, how would you convince them? Well, very often that happens because you have a very specific subgroup in your population that behave differently from the whole population. So you need to be able to spot that very quickly and then aggregate, summarize information that justify what the machine learning algorithm, find in a simple way. Probably just, hey, because the average of these people is like this, which is different from what you see every day. So visualization is simple, grouping data, aggregation, that become very, very important. And that's actually, I would say, the crucial skill for me to build my credibility among the stakeholders.
That is such a good point. You have to be able to actually explain or justify the output of that machine learning algorithm. That's a fantastic point. Jeff, I feel like when you answered a previous question, you pointed to a similar skill, which is that a lot of your job is communication, herding cats.
Yes.
Yeah.
It sounds like communication is one of those skills that is just like universal.
Yeah, totally. And I guess I didn't really understand it before I did a boot camp about how much of a designer's job is just storytelling and actually whether it's working with a researcher or doing the research yourself and aggregating all this data and then trying to synthesize it and like make sense of it and interpret what it is so that you can actually present to others, as Luke and Lou both said. Like, you're actually talking to other stakeholders who aren't designers. They may not have that much of a technical background, and saying, this is what we did. Here's kind of what we found, which is driving our decision to move forward in this way. So you're trying to kind of persuade them, trying to help them see kind of the broader picture through a story that you're telling. So definitely very key.
And Nate, anything to add here? I know Coding Temple teaches software engineering, but I feel like the curriculum has always included a bit of been like skewed towards data, right? Was there like a specific technology that you learned that you're like still using every day today?
I would say, in my current role, there's not a specific piece of technology. And I would probably just echo the exact same thing. In my role, we have a lot of stakeholders, project managers, customer meetings. So a lot of those, I don't even want to say soft skills, but yeah, being able to present and actually talk about something technical to someone who may have little to no technical background, that totally makes all the difference. And we had plenty of opportunity to present projects, do whiteboard problems. Almost everything from day one through the end of the boot camp is to get you talking and very comfortable around these technical topics that, day one you had no idea what they even were. So yeah, I would just agree with, the existing responses.
Yeah, it's a good point too that like we can think about communication as a soft skill, but really it's about having those like hard skills to back up that communication, right? Like those are almost implicit in being a good communicator. So okay, fantastic. Well, I want to spend the most time today, or the rest of our time today, on questions about your careers today. And just to remind everyone watching, Luke is working in machine learning and AI at JP Morgan Chase. Nate is a software engineer at Notable. Lou is a data scientist at DataCore, and Jeff is a lead designer at Salesforce. Just to refresh everyone's memories. But could everyone just dive in and tell us what each of you are working on with AI today? That could be in your current job or a side project. Luke, what are you up to at JP Morgan Chase?
Yeah, so I'm actually on the retail branch. So I'm more toward the marketing side. Like we would like to know, if say a customer have certain behavior, they're more likely to have a deeper relationship with us, and we don't want to miss that opportunity, right? So what machine learning can do most effective and efficiently is really just take over what is done repetitively. So you don't really need to hire like a dedicated customer um, person to monitor everything that people do. We would like to use algorithms to capture those signals and then make sure that we interact with our customers at the right time. So and we have better and better technologies back to the time of 2015. That's before I joined Chase. People are talking about things like XGBoost, and then we talk about neural networks, so that not only the tabular data could be exploited, but also images, sounds, and different stuff. Now we have like AI, which could actually interpret the result in a very human-like way. That open up a lot of possibilities.
And Nate, what are you working on at Notable?
Yeah. So I would say at Notable, I'm not directly working on or not directly developing our AI solutions, but I do work on the integrations team. So a lot of my job is, integrating our technology at Notable with our customers' healthcare record systems. So a lot of what we do, it's called RPA. Those who aren't familiar, that's robotic process automation. But essentially, a lot of this is, telling a machine, let's just say a computer, how to do a task like a person would. So it's physically logging into, let's say logging into a website, maybe searching for the login button or the username password. So a lot of that has to do with, we have a couple of different models that we use, but it's kind of a mixture of OCR, which is optical character recognition, also just some image recognition software that we use. So we have a dedicated, AI ML team that is working on those products. And it's my job to kind of fit those into our existing data flow. So most of my job is, essentially, interacting with that AI team, helping debug, bringing issues to them, and kind of integrating their work, into our customer solutions. I would say, while I'm not directly developing AI, the advent of things like GitHub Copilot, tools like ChatGPT. Those have definitely sort of leveled up my programming career. So definitely try to make as much use as possible out of those tools, whether it's automating tasks for myself as a software engineer, or just kind of leveling up, getting things done quicker there.
Okay, thanks for pointing out those two tools. I'm sure we'll talk more about them. Lou, what are you working on today?
Yeah, so I actually just started my current job, but at my last job, we were actually working on an unsupervised machine learning model to predict failure rates on machines. So basically, we used methods like principal components analysis to reduce dimensionality, and then clustering methods like DB-scan to basically determine clusters of similar activity, and outliers from those activities would constitute potential anomalous cycles on these machines. So this was actually a pretty novel method, and we were actually able to patent it at the end of the day. So it was actually a very interesting exercise, and not just coming up with a new algorithm, but also walking through the entire process of a patent as well. So going through what it felt like to interact with lawyers and legal to actually get this formalized as a new invention at the patent office. And that
Congratulations.
Yeah, it wasn't
That's
just me,
huge.
it was me and my team as well. But that was really cool to be able to do that just, a couple of years out from my boot camp, knowing that, only a few years prior, I hadn't known anything about machine learning or anything like that.
That's amazing. I'm sure, I bet that patenting in like the AI space is experiencing a surge right now. That's so interesting. I'm sure, insane process. And Jeff, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you're using AI today? I know from my brief LinkedIn stalking, I was looking at LitLab also. So tell us how you're using it, maybe on the job, but also in side projects.
Yeah. So in design, it's interesting. I've worked both sides of it. Currently at Salesforce, where we have a proprietary Gen AI called Einstein Copilot, and so current work is just trying to kind of integrate that into my area of the product, just to help out our personas so they can get their work done a little bit faster in Salesforce. And then over the summer, before I joined Salesforce, I was working as a contractor with an ed tech called LitLab. And LitLab was, what we did is kind of a little bit of like the back end side of it. Like we had an interface that teachers and students could interact with, but it was basically we were trying to find ways where we could use science of reading data and to help us differentiate different texts for students. So a lot of us, maybe we've struggled with reading growing up. Maybe some of us are dyslexic. And what we're finding in schools is that it's really hard for teachers to differentiate, maybe like if you're in fourth grade, a text that you have to read about biology, cellular biology or something like that. It's really hard for the teacher to differentiate that text for a student who's maybe at a second grade level, is really kind of struggling, versus maybe a student who's at like a seventh grade level and is really kind of accelerating. So what we did with the team at LitLab is we figured out ways to train through just prompt engineering to train ChatGPT according to different science of reading standards, so that it could actually send us back a certain text at differentiated reading levels. So there was a lot of kind of, the regular UX and UI design work that I do, but a lot of it was also, I worked as a reading remediation therapist. So I was trained in one of those methods. And so it was a lot of kind of more like theoretical, how are we going to get back the information that we wanted from something like OpenAI and ChatGPT. So that was kind of a little bit more working with engineers, working with the C-suite of the startup to figure out like, what do we actually want to get back? How do we ensure good data? It's the right data that we're pushing to students. How do we build trust among teachers? And how do we help them save time as well in their days?
Probably another bit of evidence that having that like past experience in a maybe somebody might say that's a totally unrelated field to have, worked with in, reading comprehension, but you're able to apply it to prompt engineering and probably be a much better prompt engineer because of it.
Totally.
So yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that too. It's not just like ChatGPT, you put the things in, you press, you hit okay, and then you just copy paste it into whatever you need it. You need to be able to differentiate what's in there. So Nate, as you said, you're not a machine learning technical expert, but you do work alongside the ML AI team at Notable to integrate their work into those customer integrations. That's like a super important part of the AI product lifecycle, right? Like how much ML AI do you need to know in order to work alongside those types of teams?
In my experience, integrating with my team at Notable, I don't really know the specifics, but I do know enough about kind of like the proprietary systems that we're using, that, I could be dangerous and debug and work with those on my own without actually needing to kind of see what's under the hood. So I think, a big thing that's helped me a lot is obviously we have an awesome AI ML team that's documented all of their code extremely well, and sort of created these tools, almost like we talked about earlier. If you're an expert in your domain, you can kind of explain things to people who don't know so much about it, and actually enable those people to use those tools that you've built. So I think our AI ML team has done a really good job at doing that for people like me. Like, I don't know exactly what's going on with the algorithms in the background, but I can read the documentation. It is relatively plug and play. And I do have, a huge list of tools that enable me to kind of work with, manipulate, and debug that part of the process without getting them involved too much. So I would say definitely having a knowledge of the tools you're working with is obviously a huge plus, but my actual need and knowledge of the actual sort of I guess inner workings of the tools we're using, actually can be relatively minimal, even though I'm using them all the time.
That's a fantastic point. I think super important to recognize that like that type of skill in a product's life cycle is maybe just as important, or works alongside to actually get a product live and working in the real world. As one of the machine learning engineers might also contribute. So, okay, Joseph asked in the live Q&A chat, so I just want to pitch this to y'all. He said, based on your experience and current company profile, do you need to further do upskilling or educate yourself after the boot camp to rise up in the leadership career ladder, like doing a master's? Like, did anybody feel like they needed, did anyone feel like they needed to do a master's after they graduated from a boot camp to be in the current career you're in?
So I didn't feel like it was absolutely necessary, but it turns out that my company was willing to pay for it. So I did actually end up doing a master's in computer engineering after the boot camp. And the boot camp actually set me up pretty well for that, because it gave me a pretty good survey of all of these different areas of machine learning, like deep learning, neural networks, things like that, that I was able to further develop expertise in the actual master's program. So, as I was saying before, when I first went into data science, I wasn't really that interested in all the theoretical underpinnings of it. But as I gained more and more experience, I did become interested, and that's exactly what the master's degree did for me. It was able to give me, like a very solid theoretical underpinning in all of these different areas. Writing proofs, going through the actual math of all of these algorithms, and it just lent me a lot more confidence in my abilities because I sort of knew these algorithms from the ground up after that point. So that was my experience, at least.
Okay, thanks for answering that. So sounds like not totally necessary, and a lot of people don't. But listen, if your company is going to pay for you to do your master's, not a terrible not a terrible path. And also that was a master's in computer engineering. Um, you know, getting a master's in like, does a master's in artificial intelligence exist yet?
Yeah.
I'm assuming no.
No, not quite.
Right, like you didn't need that type of, yeah, to get to the job you're in. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, Jeff, I'll let you.
All right. So Lou mentioned earlier that he was able to land his job before he even graduated from Springboard. So Jeff, I'd like to pitch this Gianna question to you. Gianna asks, did you face any difficulties getting work as you were getting out of the boot camp?
Yeah, and props to Lou. That's awesome, man. I love that story. I finished my boot camp at the end of 2018, and it took probably, let me think here, like 2 solid months to find a position. And this is, pre-pandemic, things were different. And so what I found was, in the grand scheme of things and looking back, it did not take me a long time to find a position. I was able to network pretty heavily. And again, General Assembly kind of set me up to succeed in that area. I also had kind of previous people that I knew that I could network with, that I worked with at the design agency that I mentioned earlier. I think what was hard was being persistent and just kind of talking to connections of connections of connections, or a friend of a friend of a friend, and really trying to find the right situation in the right place to start working in. I think personally, maybe this is going to be a little bit harder, and I'm willing to have people push back on this, maybe specifically in design. I don't see, I mentor junior designers, and I don't see a lot of junior designers finding jobs as quickly as I did. I think they still find them, but it just takes more time. And I think there are probably, there are many reasons behind that. But overall, I'd say it did not take me a long time. My first position was one of my friends, who is a designer, worked with a product manager who has a buddy who is a creative director at this other company. So I met with the product manager and just like chatted with him about the industry in general. And then he said, "Oh, I should introduce you to this guy." He introduced me to this creative director, and the creative director and I hit it off really quickly. And this creative director basically hired me on the spot. He's like, "Do you want to join?" I was like, "Yeah, let's go. Let's do it." So I was able to kind of, like land in that pretty quickly.
We've heard from so many career coaches from boot camps, and I feel like their number one thing is networking. And I do feel like both Jeff and Lou's first boot camp or job after boot camp is landed through that networking.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, this is a question ripped from the headlines, but was asked by Iris when they RSVP'd. Iris asked, "What do you think of the popular saying that AI will replace human laborers?" So as someone, working in tech now, maybe Luke, you could take this question if you have thoughts about it. And you're using these new technologies that people are saying may replace your job. What's your gut reaction to that headline?
Well, I have a good and bad news. Bad news is I do think a lot of the job will be replaced by AI. But the good news is it's gonna open up more opportunities that you could explore. So I'll give an example that what you could do with tool like ChatGPT and what you cannot. Like if you like to create a simple, not very well designed app that does something for you, you can simply just tell ChatGPT, "Hey, give me the Python code of doing so and so." It will give it to you, and very often it would do pretty well. But it doesn't achieve a specific or very customized objective that you might have. An example is back to a couple months ago, we are writing. So in my daily job, I work with machine learning algorithms, and usually we don't design our new machine learning algorithm, we apply. So we have to wrap it up into our pipeline. And very often to do that, you need to write a test case. And at certain points, when you write a test case, you want to make sure that the machine learning algorithm is integrated correctly into your pipeline. So you come up with a special case to see if the algorithm will output expected result. And at that point, it did not, right? So we have to figure that out. And very often that is not kind of thing that your algorithm will tell you, your ChatGPT will tell you the right way to fix your problem, because that's not something everybody else does. This is very specific to what you want to do. So you have to still look into look into the code and figure out what's going on behind the scene, and then make the right move. And so ChatGPT will help you to come up with something that will save you a lot of time, but you have to be able to pinpoint the key of the problem. Yeah.
Like that. I was wondering if Nate had anything to say about this too, on the other side in software engineering, how you're feeling about these types of headlines.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I mentioned those are tools that I use often, and yeah, it's overall, does an extremely good job if you ask it to perform a specific task. But again, that's a very general sense. There's oftentimes, like I would never plug in like any source code or anything like that. But if I generally ask like, hey, even something simple like, hey, write me a function in Python that does X, Y, Z. Most of the time it'll do that. But I found that oftentimes, there are a lot of small issues or errors and things that I need to, actually look at that and still think about as a human and say, okay, here's where we're going wrong, or here's maybe some edge cases, some things that are not being considered. So, I think for me personally, like a tool like ChatGPT totally taking my job, I don't see that anytime soon. I know that after the advent of ChatGPT, there has been kind of this, I guess, monumental rise in users, and ChatGPT is getting better and better in shorter and shorter amounts of time. So could that answer change in the next 6 months? Potentially. I hope not. But no, overall, I feel very safe in my position and just in general as far as software engineering goes, and tools like ChatGPT.
Okay, we've got a few more minutes left, and I want to get to as many questions as folks asked as possible. So Judah asked, as an aspiring data scientist, what are some key points I should be focusing on to be recognized in the job market right now? Lou, could you answer that, since I believe you're now charged with hiring new data scientists. So what are you looking for in those applicants?
Yeah, we look for people's ability to solve problem solving skill. Really, it's how accurate you could identify the issue, and how what's your ability to be able to not even just like find a solution right away, but approach, right? Find the right people to talk to, go to the right resource, and gradually put together a solution that eventually resolve the problem. That's a thing that we need.
Are you looking for any specific, like if somebody is thinking, okay, I need to take a class, I graduated from a boot camp, now I want to like take another class on like one specific technology, like is there anything that you would say to focus on?
Yeah, if it's data focused bootcamp, I think you would probably learn things, at least one of like SQL pandas, or that. And if you are proficient in that, that's already an advantage for you to compete in the job market.
And Jeff, you have a rich career in UX and product design. I've been doing this for a while, and we got some really interesting questions about your field. So Ben asked, how would you position your portfolio to apply for UX roles at AI companies? What skills should I focus on? We got a lot of questions that were just asking, like, generally, how is AI being used in UX UI design today? So are there trends that you're seeing in your field, or specific tools, or anything that you would direct a UX bootcamp grad to really focus on if they want to work with AI?
Yeah, so I think, as I said earlier, I think it's pretty broad, especially in design. Designers are using AI in different ways. They're designing for generative AI in different ways. There's still like the need for predictive AI. I worked with a startup for a while that did predictive AI, and so it's actually doing stuff like how do you visualize data in a predictive way, communicate to users this it could be what happens based on your behaviors. Um, and so it's being used in a really broad way. And so it's not like a very kind of like one specific way. And to the answer, or I'm sorry, to the question about portfolios, I think probably going along those same lines. If you're junior designer or new grad from a boot camp, I'd love to see in people's portfolios ways that they have utilized maybe Chat GPT to kind of like make things a little bit quicker, cut down on certain processes that maybe take a lot of time. Maybe it's show just how you've used Chat GPT to synthesize a lot of data. Maybe you have a lot of inputs and you're trying to figure out what's the story I'm trying to tell here. And maybe you put that in, Chat GPT spits something out, and maybe you say like, well, what about this? Like, didn't you consider these elements as well? Like push back on it and think critically. If you can show that you're using those tools, but also that you can think critically and that you can push back on certain things and try and see things from different angles, those are skills that are really highly desired in designers in our field, and especially in like startups or even like enterprise organizations like Microsoft or Salesforce or Apple and places like that. So that's what I'd say.
Do we have time, Liz, for one more question, or
let's just finish it with this one because I know we're at 2:01. So if anyone needs to drop off, I totally understand. But Alan posed this really interesting question, and I think it's a great place to wrap up. And anyone can start if you're passionate about this. Alan asked, does AI foster or stifle your creativity? And I think that's a perfect place to end. Anyone can weigh in, and then we'll wrap it up right after that.
Yeah, I guess I can take this. So I think it can do both depending on how you use it. Obviously, if you're a student and you're using ChatGPT to write yourself essays, it's not great. You're not learning, and you're basically stifling your ability to learn and critically think and compose essays for yourself. But for me, I actually think it enhances my creativity because it lets me expand my horizons in terms of different methods and different specifically coding methodologies that I can use. So on a day-to-day basis, I actually do use ChatGPT to supplement my work by helping me write code. And I think that is incredibly useful because it allows me to not just get mired in the syntax of code and how to write it, but think more big picture about the impact of that code and actually architecting the strategy behind my coding. And because of that, I think it allows me to expand my my reach in terms of what I'm thinking about when coding. And in addition to that, it really I think enhances my ability to not just think about the syntax, but also the high level architecture and the high level impact of my code itself. So that's what it does for me.
Does anyone else want to weigh in here?
Maybe I'll just say something because I'm the big nerd who did a philosophy and technology PhD. And so I think fundamentally thinking from like the theoretical, but also the pragmatic as a designer, I think that our relationship to our tools is always going to be co-determinative in the sense that like we are becoming something else through our interactions with our tools. Our tools are also growing in their interactions with us. This could actually become a flourishing relationship, or it can lead to the kind of relationship where we, in a sense, are taken away kind of the pieces of what makes us human. And to kind of what Lou was saying, I think that creativity is ultimately an act of composition. And so we have learned certain skills, whether it's thinking critically, whether it's drawing, whether it's deciphering, data, writing code. When we offload too many of those skills upon our machines, it's actually a loss for us. And so in our technologies, exactly what Lou said, always kind of look at it as a supplement, something that can push you a little bit more as well. Our tools are growing as we grow and as we become something else. So don't let the tools, don't let the machines kind of take away what you have. Work in conjunction with it, and you'll actually see kind of, I think, what would be like a very kind of creative growth.
That is beautifully put and a perfect place to wrap up. Thanks everyone for spending a couple extra minutes here and for tuning in. And to Luke and Jeff and Lou and Nat and Nate, thanks so much. We cannot thank you enough for being here. We're going to post this video on the blog with a transcript soon, and we'll send it to you on a follow-up email later today. And thank you so much for your questions. This is our last live Q&A of the year, but we're going to continue to do many more of these throughout 2024. So you can let us know in the comments or email us at hello@coursereport.com and let us know if there's a specific topic that you want us to dive into on the next one. We'll see you in the new year.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Okay.